Pour yourself a cold one.
Let's strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented as always by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Now a bunch of podcasts, all 30 minutes or less, giving you your football fill so you can be the most knowledgeable person among your friends, your families, maybe most importantly, your colleagues at work. We got the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, and we posted our first power rankings of the season yesterday. So you can see, or I guess hear, where your team stacks up. We are now daily, Monday through Friday, on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. We've got the Fantasy Feast podcast getting you ready for all of the NFL Week 1 action. Who should be in your lineup? Who should not? And then the Even Money podcast. We actually record that a little bit later today to help all of you place your bets. If you want to know what's going on and or see some witty commentary and some great press box food and maybe some beer and maybe get a free Madden, make sure you're following at Ross Tucker NFL on Twitter and on Instagram. Very, very important. You should also be following at Ross Tucker Pod, because I have a sneaky suspicion at Ross Tucker Pod will be the one actually giving away a free copy of Madden today. Again, at Ross Tucker Pod. The key to this show, though, it's Emory Hunt, the hardest working man in football, at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube. And I already saw where at least a couple of you last week said, oh, Ross, thanks for the reminder. I just went to footballgameplan.com/2023 draft guide to get my order already, which I love it, Emory. Why wait? Why wait? But get the pre-order in now, so as soon as it's ready, you get it.
Right. And the fact that, you may even get it earlier this year than previous years. I'm trying to work smarter, not harder. I usually go dark right after the Super Bowl and spend a month just breaking down film and getting it out before the combine. You might even get it during All-Star game season. Who knows?
Ooh, I like it. I like the tease there. Emory, before we get into some of the big games this week, because that's what we do. We talk about the biggest games, the best players, best prospects in the biggest games, and Emory picks the games against the spread. I did want to just get any thoughts, takeaways you had from week 1 in college football, whether it was Georgia's demolition of Oregon or Ohio State, Notre Dame, or maybe the games the last couple nights, LSU, Florida State, Clemson, Georgia Tech. What observations, if any, do you have? I feel like, by the way, I'll say one. There might be some more people, Emory, getting on your Anthony Richardson bandwagon that you started after that play he had the other night. You're the only one out there, and I know this for a fact from what I've seen at least, that had him as the number 1 ranked quarterback. I'm not saying he is that yet, but you know what it's like. You play a big game on a Saturday night, you have a play like that, the momentum starts.
Right. It starts to build, and everyone is going to start to one-up one another. It goes from, I think he's the best quarterback in his draft class, to I think he's the next Cam Newton, to I think he may be the best quarterback prospect in the last 2 decades, right? So everyone's going to, try to one-up like this guy more than the next guy. But, a lot of the traits that you saw out there were the traits that I highlighted on this show, and also just said, hey, if you're projecting forward, when we're talking about, because people always take the word and not understand the word at its meaning, and we both are college educated. You went to an Ivy League school. I went to a school that's the best, quite honestly, pound for pound in the state of Louisiana. So we take these words seriously, where if we're talking about prospect, we're talking about tools and projecting forward. And he has the best tools, and, combined with youth and growth. That's the prospect, right? So, it was funny to see that the people high-ranking draft nicks say, wow, I can't wait to break down Richardson. Well, wait, you cover the draft for a living. What are you doing? Like, how could you not be ahead of the curve on this, right? But to your question about my takeaway, and as you know, Ross, I'm not a prisoner of the moment guy. I love to provide perspective. But I will say this. I feel like last week was the best opening week of college football we've seen in history. You know, and I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough, right? So from the App State North Carolina game to Florida State LSU to Florida Utah to a lot of these games that we saw over the course of the weekend, it was like, yo, this is phenomenal action that we're getting in these high stake, crazy college football games. East Carolina, NC State was another one that just kind of was like, I can't believe game after game is giving us down to the wire type mayhem. And this is what makes college football so much fun. And in my opinion, so much better than the NFL game. And I love the NFL game because you're getting the best of the best, and you're getting competitive, high level games, but you don't get mayhem like you do in college football. And even to the LSU game, I hated how everyone was I had a friend that was at the game, and then I go back and watch the game on the All 22 afterwards to see confirmation of what I thought was happening live, right? And to see people kill Jayden Daniels for taking off as if, at the top of his drop, every time they showed the replay from the end zone cam, at the top of his drop, receiver still running the routes. Somebody, offensive lineman's gotten beaten across his face, and the defender's in his face of Jayden Daniels. He had no choice but to take off, and it's because he was taking off and picking up those cheap yards. It kept LSU in the game. But when he had to lock in and make throws, and this is the point I kept bringing up about Jayden Daniels all throughout the summer, was his situational football and situational awareness and his toughness is what makes him a really good quarterback. And we saw that on that 99-yard touchdown drive, right? But also another thought, and I'm not rambling here, but it was sort of bittersweet watching homeboy verse for the Florida State Seminoles smash LSU, right? Great defensive end is going to be a great player. He's going to get drafted. He's going all. But if you're Albany, you like, what the hell, man? Like, we did all this work when you at Florida State probably said, hey, you're too small, too short, just not quite there yet. Okay, at Albany, we like, yeah, okay, we got you. We gonna give you opportunity. We develop you. We give you that opportunity. You go off, and then Florida State comes back around and say, oh yeah, wow, you're a great player. We want you. And you, as the college athlete, is like, yeah, you know what? I want to go to Florida State. It's like, dang, man, like they told you were ugly earlier, and now they, back then they wasn't on you. Now you hot, they all over you. Like so if I'm an FCS program, it's almost like we have that spotlight game on that player was like, wow, we really got to now re-recruit these guys consistently because these FCS these FBS Power 5 programs are going to come poach our best players.
Yeah, man, it's the new normal, and I don't feel great about it either. But I just think we have to get used to it. It's crazy, by the way, for a guy to come from Albany and to be that dominant already. It's 2 games in a row where he's just been killing guys. Good. I'm happy for him. He's going to get drafted higher as a result, and I ultimately want every kid possible to maximize the financial security they can get for their families from their talents and their hard work. So I'm happy for him. But yeah, it is a little rough for the FCS schools. And it's interesting, even me doing the UAB Alabama A&M last week, UAB's got a bunch of good players, and their interim head coach, Bryant Vincent, was saying a lot of them had offers to go other places, and they chose to stay. Now, UAB's a top 5 group of 5 program, so you can see why, but they have some really good guys that I'm sure had options, and with NIL and the transfer portal, it's kind of just the new normal. So I'm with you, Emory. I guess this is how it's going to be. The kids that can't hack it at the P5s are going to transfer down, see how they do it at the group of 5s or FCS. The kids that end up being excellent at the group of 5 or FCS, a lot of them are going to transfer up. It's wild. Speaking of wild, let's get to the wild, wild west. USC at Stanford. USC's laying 9. I guess I'm a little surprised, Emory, when you look at USC wide receiver Jordan Addison. He was the Blitnikoff Award winner last year. We had 3 wide receivers go in the top 11 picks. Yet I look at some of these rankings out there, and he's not really projected to go in the top 20. Most of the ones I've seen have him later first round. So I'm a little surprised by that the guy that won the Blitnikoff, that lit it up, isn't thought of as highly as a bunch of guys that, got drafted this past year that he won the award over.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like he's being looked at as a product of the system as opposed to being the system. But in that same breath, these same folks looked at Kenny Pickett and said, oh, he superseded the system when he could have been a product of the system. And I feel like all of that is kind of intertwined. And we should see, him project higher based off where he's gone now, transferring out of that system. But then he's going to get the same knock in this new system because people go say, well, it's, Lincoln Riley system. It's schemed open these big plays, these shot plays. But I feel like people are looking at his size and kind of saying he's more of a Deontay Johnson than Larry Fitzgerald, just based off his size. Well, yeah, of course, he's not 6'3", 225, 6'4", but you could still be a high level productive receiver. I think people probably are viewing him more as a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 as opposed to a bona fide number 1. All I know is I like guys that can put the ball in the paint. I want those guys on my football team, and I think he's one of the best receivers in the country. And again, the NFL draft is fickle. No matter where you go, I just want you on the team. You know what I'm saying? So as long as you go to the right situation, I think he's going to be someone that supersedes situation regardless of where he goes. So he's still a fantastic prospect. It's fascinating you brought that up because it is weird how the narrative was last year for him. He should be allowed to go to the pros now. Okay, cool. I agree with you there. If you're good enough, you should be able to go. But now that he's eligible, well, we could, there's other guys that are, we kind of like better than him. It's such a bizarre dynamic.
What do you think of Stanford quarterback Tanner McKee, Emory? I know like our buddy Dane Brugler and some other people like him. I didn't know that much about him.
Yeah, I actually like him better than Will Levis. I think he throws the ball a little bit better, a little bit more consistent than Will Levis. And we'll talk about Levis later. But his lower body mechanics needs a lot of work. And he kind of looks like your cookie cutter, copy and paste Stanford quarterback. He kind of looks like Davis Mills out there, right? A guy that has a looping delivery when he throws a football, but, has some intermediate velocity and some arm strength that kind of it may look like it's not coming out with some steam, but it does have some steam on it. His placement has to improve. And so we should see if he could flatline his play. There were some peaks and valleys last year with this play. You want to see those peaks sustained because I think Stanford could be a sneaky, good team this year in the Pac-12 because a lot of the people they have returning and the veteran or experience they have with McKee at quarterback.
Well, what about the spread in this one with USC favored by 9? What are you doing there?
It's a lot of points, but until proven otherwise, I want to see Stanford's defense be able to cover and defend USC. So I'm going to lay those 9 points with USC. I know people are scared off with how the game started last week versus Rice, but USC's talent just overtook Rice at the end of the day. So I think that'll happen in this one. I do like USC. I'll lay the points.
What about a huge game in the SEC? Boy, Florida's not messing around with their schedule this year, right? I mean, Utah week 1. Now they got Kentucky. Kentucky is at Florida. And you were mentioning Will Levis, the Kentucky quarterback.
Yeah, Levis to me reminds me a lot of Daniel Jones. Stature, athleticism, how he plays. I think he's much better when he's playing under center because that helps him get his footwork and mechanics in line. But I don't see the arm strength to really drive the football in these tight windows. And I think he's a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger at times. You want to see that anticipation kick up a notch. And if that happens, then we'll probably see him connect a little bit more on these deeper throws or whatnot. I feel like last year was a lot of these short to intermediate passes, Wandale Robinson type plays. But you want to see, especially in this game, can he attack the football deep down the field consistently? And I think that's areas of growth for him, or areas of opportunity for growth within this game. But I have him slightly behind a Tanner McKee because of some of those inconsistencies.
The edge rusher that you like for Florida is Brenton Cox Jr.
Yeah, he's a lean athlete. He's got some good muscle tone to him. I think he can provide good pop upon contact, and will probably have to be a force in this game and disrupt a lot of what Kentucky wants to do throwing the football. You saw in that game against Utah, he had some opportunities to really, get pressure on Cam Rising and frustrate him in the pocket. I want to see him finish a little bit more in this game, and I think the finishing part is where there's that room for growth for Cox in this game.
This is a huge matchup for Levis and Anthony Richardson. They might be the two most physically imposing and impressive quarterback prospects. They certainly look better than CJ Stroud or Bryce Young on the hoof. This is going to be a heck of a game, Emory, just to watch these two quarterbacks go at each other. Florida's favored by 4.5. At least they're playing at home again, back-to-back weeks at home.
Yeah, I feel like 4.5 is a lot, considering the magnitude of this game, how Kentucky runs the football. I know people want to see the run game be better. I think their run game will be better. Kentucky really is a good point of attack team on both sides of the ball. Florida, we know, can run the football. Their defense will have to kick it up a notch. I felt like Utah, was able to move the football consistently on them, especially on third down. So I see this one going back and forth, man. So 4.5 seems like a lot. I do like Florida to win the game. They have the better quarterback. I will say take Kentucky in the points because I feel like this will be a lot closer than that. That 4.5 just seems like way too much in this game, in the magnitude of this game.
What about Baylor at BYU? Baylor's favored by 3.5. They're laying 3.5. And you got an O lineman for Baylor, Connor Galvin.
Very good left tackle. Good body lean. I'm big on body lean, to be honest. I know everyone is built differently, and you could, you have O linemen come in all shapes and sizes. But when you have good body lean, it kind of gives you a good shot to be successful. And I like him more in that regard because of how he's able to be athletic against these different types of rushers he sees in the Big 12. Big 12 low-key got a lot of speed coming off the edge. He's able to handle it, set a good anchor, then redirect these defenders. So up front gives them a shot, and they're going to need him in this game because in this game he's going to be more counted on to withstand that strength that BYU has up front. I do also feel like because of how he's built and how he plays, his strength will match the strength of those rushers he's going to see.
You surprised BYU's favored by 3.5?
Not at all. They have excellent quarterback play and they have experience, and that's always going to be the theme with BYU is the experience. But not Jaren Hall is phenomenal, and he's the guy to watch for BYU. He's another one of these quarterback prospects that I have ranked higher, maybe some than most because of his talent. I think he is just like Zach Wilson in terms of what he brings to the table. He can run. He's got a whip of an arm. I think he has a stronger arm than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson may have the quicker release, but I like Jaren Hall's composure under pressure. I think he handles pressure better, and he's going to see a lot of it in this game from Baylor because of Aranda's defense and the challenges they present themselves and the moving pieces that they have on defense. But Hall is someone who played well in this game last year against Baylor. So I feel like he can do that again, especially with some of the options that he has out there on the field.
Couple interesting things about Jaren Hall. One is, to your point about experience, he's 24 years old. That's the way BYU rolls, man. 24 years old. He is the first black quarterback to start a game at BYU. I didn't realize that when he started in place of Zach Wilson against South Florida, and he played in 2 games in 2018. I mean, that's a long time ago now. It feels like 2018, but that's how a lot of these guys are now, especially for BYU. So, really looking forward to that game and watching him play. What are you doing with the spread there, Emory? 3.5 is what BYU is laying.
Yeah, it's the hook that kind of scares me here because of how good Aranda's defense is. So I'm gonna say take Baylor in the points. I really don't have a pick in this game, but if I had to lean, it would probably lean toward BYU because of Jaron Hall. But Blake Shippen is a really good quarterback for Baylor in his own right. And so, we could see another one of these wild games that go back and forth. So that's why the hook here scares me. So I'll say take Baylor and the points.
Yeah, I would never lay 3.5 points. Just a bad number. It's just that they're begging you to take the dog. I feel like in those games, not a fan of laying 3.5. What about the battle of 2 of the best backs in the country? Alabama at Texas, Emory, where Alabama on the road is laying 20. Alabama at Texas. Let's start with the Alabama running back who could have been playing last night for Georgia Tech, but he wasn't. His name's Jahmyr Gibbs.
He's explosive, man. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again for those that are just tuning in for the first time. I agree with a lot of the people that are saying he's Alvin Kamara like. You can see that because he's so dynamic out on the perimeter in a downfield passing game. He's always one carry away from breaking it to the house. And I feel like that's going to be the difference in this Alabama offense this year. When you talk about what Alabama has been missing, it's been the dynamic tailback. When they've had that, they've been virtually unstoppable. We saw this with Mark Ingram. We saw this with Derrick Henry. And we're going to see this with Jahmyr Gibbs. And what was impressive in this game or in the game last week was how Bryce Young ran for over 100 yards. We really don't even talk about Bryce Young in terms of the running threat, but having Jahmyr Gibbs and also now Bryce Young's running ability is going to be bananas to try to defend Alabama because now they can beat you on both ends of offense. So Gibbs to me is a more dynamic player than Bijan Robinson. But it's not to say Bijan Robinson isn't a great talent in his own right.
Well, let's talk about that because I've also seen, Bijan Robinson looks like, maybe one of the more highly ranked running backs we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, to me, it's funny, Ross, because as much as Twitter, fantasy football Twitter, draft Twitter, analytics Twitter, as much as they love to bang on these running backs in the run game, there's a deep philosophical reason why I believe they hate the run game, but I'll keep that under my hat. But for the sake of this, point I'm trying to make, both of these backs going in the first round, because they're difference makers, and that's the difference. That's why you want to take those type of backs in the first round. And Bijan Robinson, for me, I feel like you could drop him off in any era, to be honest. I feel like if you told me Bijan Robinson was following Cedric Benson, I'm like, yeah, I could see that. I could see him being next in line. And while Benson has 175 yards rushing against Tulsa, they showing the camera on the sideline and Bijan Robinson, but they got this freshman, Bijan Robinson, that's pretty doggone good. He's waiting in the wings from insert Texas high school, blah, blah, blah. I can see that. If you told me he was, able to play the space game like that, what it is now, I can see that too, where you line him up in the slot and have him run routes. I think he could thrive in that era. I think he could thrive in this era right here that we're currently seeing him in, where he doesn't need volume to be successful. He's just like Gibbs. He's one play away, one carry away from making a big play. And I think that right there gives Texas a chance in games. And he's a big physically imposing guy. He's not Derrick Henry imposing, but he's well put together. He's legit 6 feet, 220 pounds with game breaking speed. That's quote unquote, knock on wood. That's how Cedric Benson was, the late great Cedric Benson. So for me, I love Bijan Robinson. I think he's he has that complete back. explosiveness with them, or the tag on him he could be the complete back. I want to see how well he does in blitz pickup in his game, because I'm pretty sure, because they're starting a freshman, it's probably the same thing with Bill Belichick versus a rookie, Nick Saban versus freshman quarterbacks. I want to see how well he's going to be utilized in the passing game, not necessarily catching the ball, because I know he could do that and be a downfield threat, but how he can protect, because I think that's going to be an area of his game that obviously you're going to want to study when we're talking about draft. But in this game, I think it's going to be critical for him to keep Quinn Ewers from being, shell-shocked from the pressures he's going to see coming from Alabama.
Alabama's laying 20, Emory. 20. Your thought? It's a big number.
Oh, man, it's a big number, man, but it's Alabama, and 20 can happen so fast. And, we're at the part of the season where Texas is back. So I feel like a lot of people are going to say take Texas in the points because of what Texas did last week. They're back. They got Ewers, and, man, lay these points with Alabama. Texas is not back yet, and it'll be tight for a quarter, to where everyone is going to buy in, and everybody's going to be talking. You're going to see a lot of the orange bloods on social media. Bijan's going to have a big run in the beginning of the part of the game, and everybody's going to say this is the game Alabama lose. Nick Saban should retire. He's 70 whatever years old, and ladies point, they're going to look back up in the third quarter, and Alabama's going to have like a 41-13 lead. And yeah, lay these points comfortably with Alabama.
Check him out on social media at FBall Game Plan is where you can find Emory, or Football Game Plan on YouTube. We are youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. If you want to watch this show or see the highlights of any of the other shows I mentioned earlier, I'll mention it again, footballgameplan.com/2023 draft guide to make sure you get Emory's draft guide. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We're at Ross Tucker Pod on social media. Other than that, the keg is kicked. We are all tapped out.
Thanks for listening to the College Draft Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, and the Business of Sports. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.